Good evening. I'm Socrates, Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. We believe Digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the deep, deep South. Mississippi, the garden spot. We're ideally located and situated 200 miles from every major city in the Southeast. We're 200 miles from Memphis, Tennessee, 200 miles from Birmingham, Alabama, 200 miles from Mobile, Alabama, 200 miles from Shreveport, Louisiana. So you see, we should be the transportation hub of the South. The mighty Pearl River runs down through the city limits of Jackson, Mississippi. Interstate I-20 and I-55 intersect right here in Jackson, Mississippi. So you have to ask the question, why is Mississippi last in most categories that are meaningful to a great quality of life? Why is it that we have the highest infant mortality rates among children? Why is it that we're the most obese state in the country? Why is it that we're last in education? Why is it that our healthcare agencies and our governor won't expand Medicaid in the state of Mississippi? Why? Our climate is great, the soil is fertile. What makes Mississippi be last? Why can't we be like Silicon Valley? Why can't we be like Stamford, Connecticut? Why don't we have CEOs of major corporations that are domiciled right here in Jackson, Mississippi? Why is it that Texas has more millionaires than any place else in the country? Why? That's the question. Now, you're watching us here on Facebook. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook, then we want you to share this program with your friends and family. We want you to send us stars. If you're watching us on YouTube at We Believe Digital Podcast, then we want you to subscribe to our program. Many exciting programs are housed right there on YouTube. If you're watching us on our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com, then we ask you to hit the donate button and enjoy the lineup of shows that are housed right there, where they will be archived forever, so that you can go back and see what was it like in 2023 for African Americans. Now, we want to make sure that our children and our grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren have the opportunity to review this show and others 50 years from today, so that they'll be able to see exactly what we were talking about and how we felt about our accomplishments or the lack thereof. You see, the problem that I have as an African-American male is that I really don't know my history. I really don't know where I came from. I really don't know where my relatives are. I'm a man in America, but I don't share in all of the largesse of all of the great things of America. I'm not a great landowner. I don't have a yacht in the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I don't have all of the things that Americans consider to be near and dear to their quality of life. And part of that has got to do with the fact that I don't know my history. And you got to remember that he who enters the race far behind will remain far behind unless he runs faster than everyone else in the race. The likelihood of you running faster is not good. And so you are reconciled to a position that keeps you as a second-class citizen, a position that does not allow you to enjoy the fruits of this great nation. Make no mistake about it, America is the greatest experience that the world has ever known. Other countries envy us. All of the freedoms that we have, the ability to travel whenever we feel like it, to get up and get in your car and drive to Chicago. The ability to pursue your own dreams. You know, it is said that we enjoy the pursuit of happiness. Not necessarily, you're not guaranteed happiness in America, but you are endowed with certain inalienable rights, inclusive of the pursuit of happiness. And so we have this program because we're in pursuit of first-class citizenship and ultimately of a great quality of life that we know every American deserves and should have. Now, as always, my co-host is Dr. Eldridge Henderson, a man that is sought after all over this country as one of the great orators. He's speaking in many of your churches and institutions and your community organizations almost every week. And if you need a great speaker, then I'm going to ask him to give his identification, the ways that you can contact him a little bit later on. But I always like to say he's a man that was born on a plantation in the Mississippi Delta. And when you're born on a plantation, you're starting way behind. Imagine being born in Stanford, where your father was the CEO of major corporations, and as a boy you were running around through the offices and the ivory towers and the cars that were picking you up and carrying you out to lunch in fine places and going to all of the movies and the theaters and the fine restaurants and all of the sports activities. Imagine that if you were born on a plantation, what you had an opportunity to do and what you saw. Tremendously different. So Dr. Henderson, having been born on a plantation and now having risen to be Dr. Eldridge Henderson right here in Jackson, Mississippi, not only is he gifted and intelligent, book smart, but he's also street smart. He also has survival instincts that you develop when you live most of your life in fear. As a boy, growing up on a plantation, knowing that any day that the plantation owner could show up and send you away, and the other half sent to the fields to work. Knowing that every year when you go to the country store to ask for enough rations to feed your family, large families, that you knew you were never going to get out of debt because you didn't keep the books. And so you were relegated to a position of inferiority, and you were to remain there for the rest of your life. But Dr. Henderson did not remain there. And so he's sitting here with us today, and we're going to talk about his humble beginning, how he managed to become Dr. Eldridge Henderson, and I want him to tell a little bit about how it was back in the day of his childhood and the days of his father's childhood, so that our children will know, because Mississippi does not teach Black History Month. The critical race theory is not taught in Mississippi. It's banned completely. And there are reasons for that, and we're going to get into that a little bit later on. But I want to turn now to my co-host, Dr. Eldridge Henderson, and say, Dr. Henderson, as always, it's good to see you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Socrates. I'm very proud to be here. You know how it is when you have a cold and it's gradually getting better. I'm gradually getting better, and I'm ready to go. Ready to go.
Well, let's jump right into it. I introduced you as a man born on a plantation, and we want to know what that was like for you, and we want to know what it was like with your father. Did you know your father and your grandfather? I mean, just tell us a little bit about how Eldridge Henderson got here.
Well, it's very, very interesting, and I'm going to start with my father. Then I'm going to talk about his father and my grandfather's father. That's
Okay.
4 generations.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you how we started, but I'm going to start with myself first. Ladies and gentlemen, when you're young and you don't know what's going on, and you are what I call segregated or contained in a community, and you never have any outside exposure to what's going on in society, you think you live in paradise. I was born in the mid-1940s in Mississippi. Believe it or not, I was born in the Delta, Mississippi. That's the big farming area, a lot of cotton up in there in that time. But in 2 weeks, my family moved to a place called Hinds County, Mississippi, down in the wooded area on a dirt road, way down in what we call the dog woods. No pavement, no rocks on the road, just dirt. On a plantation, in what we call a plantation house. And I was one of the most happiest young men in the world, because when I had a chance to get old enough to know about my future, I was told indirectly that, boy, you don't have anything to worry about. They called us boys back in those days. You're not going to have anything to worry about, nothing to worry about. Say one thing for certain, you're going to have a guaranteed good life. I can assure you. And this was the plantation owner talking directly to my father. If you stay with me, I'm not going to call my dad's name because he's still alive, but if you stay with me, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to guarantee that you're going to have what you need. You're going to have a free house. You're going to have food when you need it. You're going to have a guaranteed job as long as you stay here, and you will never have to have any worry about money. Anytime you need some money, you can get it. You can come and see me. And you don't have to pay it back until about 6 months or a year from now. And if things don't work out, I'm still going to keep you if you just stay with me, because I'm concerned about you. Now, this plantation owner was not talking to me, but being a little old black youngster, I would listen to that kind of stuff, because my dad believed in work, and he had me out there and my brothers working when we were about 5 years of age on that plantation. Guaranteed housing, guaranteed money, guaranteed food, clothing and shelter. And that was my start, Mr. Socrates, at 5 years of age. Prior to school time, I was happy running around with no shoes on during the summer, because we couldn't use the shoes we had during the summer because they were the Sunday school and church school clothing and shoes. So when it got warm, we had to hit the bare earth. We had to be barefooted. That's what we called it during that time. No shoes. Couldn't afford them. So we would spread those toes out, hit those rocks when you go on the road, go out in the woods and hunt without shoes on, jumping over briars and everything, chasing rabbits down with sticks. They wouldn't let us have the rifle at the time. We were too young. And Mom had faith in us. When she would send us out to bring some food back, this is a historical fact. Before we would leave, she would get that stove wood and put it in the stove. And she would get some grease, and so we called it lard at that time, L-E-R-D, some old white grease, and put it in a skillet. And I noticed she'll be shaking a bag, had flour and pepper in it, and little stuff like that. And we had to go out and find some food. We called it, at that time, hunting rabbits. Hunting rabbits. We had to bring something back. True story. And we would go out there and we would find a rabbit. And my dad was smart. He taught us how to get those rabbits because he wouldn't allow us to use the rifle. He had one weapon, an old rifle. He said, now if you want a rabbit, son, this is what you all have to do. Now you got the dog. So you let the dog jump the rabbit, which means he's going to stir up the bushes because the dog can smell where the nests were. There were a lot of nests all over the area out there in the woods. And the rabbit would jump up. And he would start running the rabbit, chasing the rabbit. And since I was good with a stick, he said, son, you stay right there where they jumped that rabbit. And my other brothers and neighbors run behind the rabbit with the dogs. And if he stops, you beat the bushes and make sure he doesn't get a chance to rest. You just stand there and wait. I guarantee you, in less than 30 minutes, he's going to come back to your area, and he's going to be running real slow. He's going to be scared, stressed out, and looking around. And that's when I want you to hit him with that stick and bring him home. And that's where I learned my precision skills. And every time we'll bring 2 or 3 rabbits home on a stick. And time we get there, Mr. Socrates, we knew exactly what to do. Go to that back porch, put that rabbit on a nail, skin him right quick, and gut him. And folks, that means you get your knife, take out the intestines, put him in a tub of water, rinse him up real good, cut him up, and take him in there to Mama. By that time, we call her Mama Dear. By that time, that grease would be bubbling, because she knew we were going to bring something back. We know not to come home empty-handed. Put that rabbit in there, and by that time, we noticed she would have another skillet on the stove with flour in it, with water in it, and grease. And she might have a little onion there. And she would make gravy. She'd fry that rabbit, put that gravy on it, and if we were lucky, it was close to Sunday, we would have some rice. And she would put that rice and gravy together and throw some of that good old rabbit in there. And most times we would have some cornbread that we made ourselves out of the corn that we raised, that we would take it to the mill and grind it up. And man, you ate with your hand. We had about 5 or 6 spoons and forks, but we couldn't use those until Sunday. We ate with our hands during those days until I turned to be about 15. Now, on Sundays now, we were real good eaters. We had forks and spoons, had 5 or 6 of them. But you only use one at a time. I think we had one good knife and 2 or 3 old case knives. Some of you all, ladies and gentlemen, know the difference between a real knife and a case knife. So you cut that meat up and eat it. Up until I was about 15 or 16, I thought I was in heaven because I'd never worried about food, never worried about shelter, didn't have to worry about a job, and my folks always was able to get some money to put clothes on our backs.
Well, Dr. Henderson, that's remarkable that you learned how to survive. They taught you skills of survival. And so as an African-American boy, you could feed yourself. You could go out in the woods and chase a rabbit down and bring him home and feed the family. What about African-American boys of today?
The African-American boys today are usually in a position where they are born and turned loose. They are not taught any survival skills. They only know what they see on television and YouTube. Usually when you look at black people on television or YouTube, They're either singing, dancing, or playing basketball or football, acting a fool in some of these live situations like the Atlanta Wives and so forth, fighting and killing and stealing, and that's all about 90% of the black males and females know, because they don't use the social media for academic enhancement, usually for entertainment. So they learn how to be hustlers and tussles and jivers, and they learn how to make the ends meet by doing things that are semi-illegal, and that's why so many of them get in trouble, and that's why so many of them drop out of school, because they see this kind of propaganda on social media, and they think you got to have money to make it versus an education.
Well, when you were a boy, what did you know about drugs?
I didn't know anything about drugs. Now, I did hear that there were certain people in the community that were making whiskey and selling whiskey. And when I got to be about 16, I found out what was real about that. I got an opportunity at 16 to work in what I call a local honky-tonk. My uncle made whiskey. He made what we call homebrew and whiskey in the woods, made the homebrew in the kitchen. And he would make his own alcohol, use the same bucket, the same sheet that he was used to filter the stuff in, and sell it to his friends and neighbors on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. And he was an independent businessman.
He probably was a wealthy man.
Well, he wasn't wealthy, but he was sure middle class, because he didn't have to worry about the police raids. Because every time the police had a problem with him, and the neighbors got jealous and called the police, he would get a call from the police, or the police would send a deputy over and say, "We're going to raid you Saturday night."
Advance notice.
And he would know to have a few gallons of whiskey under the table or under the bed or somewhere. They'd take that, give him a little old notice. He didn't have to worry about going to jail. They would keep the whiskey. I don't know what they would do with it, but they never had a trial. They just fined him a little bit, and he did that until he died.
Now we're up against the station break. We're going to come back and continue our conversation about, Mississippi history, the lives of African American then versus now. And we're going to talk about that. We want this program to be educational and informative, and we want our young people to know, and our young parents out there to know, how you raise boys and what is it that boys really need. But we're up against the station break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Looking for the hottest content in the city of Jackson and surrounding areas? Check out WeBelieveDigital.com. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We Believe Digital Podcast is here for all your podcasting needs.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earthblend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Welcome back to Socrates, Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the Deep South. Mississippi, a rural state, an agricultural state, a state that was booming with cotton. We had more African Americans in Mississippi than any place else in the world. There were more blacks in Mississippi than there were Europeans at one time. And of course, Mississippi was the home of the mighty Choctaw Nation. Choctaw Nation was headquartered right here in Mississippi, up in Philadelphia, Mississippi, the hometown of Medgar Evers and Charles Evers. Medgar Evers was the field secretary that was gunned down in Mississippi by white racists. And so Mississippi has a horrid history, but it's a history that we must tell, and we must remember, because it's critically important. Once we get established who we are, where we come from, then we can talk about where we are going. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to go ahead, send us some stars, and share this program with your friends and family. You can call us at 1-800-492-5186 and join in on this conversation. If you're watching us on YouTube, we want you to subscribe to this program. You know, our subscribers are growing every day. And we sit right there on the lineup with YouTube, just like Showtime and Netflix and all of the rest of those wonderful streaming services. If you're watching us on WeBelieveDigital.com, our very own platform, then we want you to hit the donate button. We want you to scroll down on that website, on that platform, and you'll see 8 to 10 categories: inspiration, sports, entertainment, things like that. You choose what you want to look at and the programs that you want to see. Also, if you stroll down, you'll see that we have the internet radio, We Believe Radio. You click on We Believe Radio and you hear some of the best music 24 hours a day. And so we are, in fact, a media company. We have the Mississippi Link newspaper that's housed right here in this facility with us. They've been operating over 29 years. Jackie Hampton, the publisher of the Mississippi Link newspaper, she likes for me to let everybody know that she's also the owner and publisher. She and Minnie Garrett, the paper is female-owned and operated, and those credentials are important because we believe in supporting and know the roles that we all play in making one another successful. So the Mississippi Link is his house right here. And so we have the broadcast studio that you see right here. We have our engineers in here working every day. Ariel Galloway is doing an outstanding job producing shows, not only for the We Believe Digital, but other media outlets throughout the state of Mississippi. And so we have all of the ingredients of becoming a very powerful voice in America. We've been seen in over 139 countries all over the world. We Believe Digital. Log that name down. Your children will be talking about We Believe Digital just like they talk about CNN. You know, I remember when CNN first got started over there with Ted Turner and the guys over there, Bernard Shaw. Look what it has become today. I remember when it was just Bernard Shaw. He was on there 24 hours a day talking about the news. And so now they are a powerful media outlet that influences not only what happens in your local community, but influences what happens nationally. And so we intend to do that here with We Believe Digital as well. Now, we were talking about what it was like being an African-American male in Mississippi back in the early 40s and 50s. In the late 30s. Now, Dr. Henderson has given you some concepts and ideas of what it was like for him as a boy. And so I'd like to share a little bit with you about how it was for me. We were a little bit different than Dr. Henderson, having had the luxury and the luck not to be born on the plantation. You see, you know, the luck of the draw is not fair. I was not born on a plantation. I was, in fact, born on land that my daddy owned. And so I had a different upbringing, but I was black. And so there was a saying in Mississippi back then and now that a Negro, and that's not exactly the word that was used, you will always be reminded that you are a Negro and you will be relegated to a second-class citizenship. I'm reminded of the fact that as a boy, when I was walking down the streets in Natchez, Mississippi, and in Canton, Mississippi, if white folk were coming down the sidewalk, I had to get off of the sidewalk and let them pass. I'm reminded that we had all of these drinking water signs, colored water. I'm reminded that as a boy at 9 years old, when Emmett Till was brutally murdered up in Money, Mississippi for allegedly whistling at a white woman. See, we couldn't even look at a white woman. One comedian once said that if you saw me with a white woman, he was holding her for the police. We had no desire. We knew that that was a death sentence just as certain as if you had been found guilty in a court of law and was being hung. We had, as a boy, I grew up understanding my place. So each morning we'd get up before day, and my mother would divide her children. There were 8 of us. She would send 6 of us out to pick cotton or chop cotton or whatever we were doing at the time. She would have one there cleaning up the house and one would stay and do the cooking. So we get up every morning and we'd have to milk the cows and we'd have to feed the hogs and we'd have to go to the fields and chop and pick cotton until about 7:30. So from 4:30 to 7:30 we were working. About 7:30, we had to come home, and everybody would get in that number 2 tub and bathe and clean yourself up, and your food would be waiting on the table. And we would all grab a biscuit and a piece of sausage, and we would walk to school. And so when I got to school, I had already worked for 2.5 hours prior to getting to school. After school, we'd come back. She'd take your little school clothes off and put on them brogans and send you back to the field where you worked till dark. We used to stay in the field so late until it would be lightning bugs was the only way that we could see, because Mother would make us stay there and work until dark. And we did that as a matter of routine every day. And when it was too wet to go to the farm, then we had to go to the woods and chop pulpwood and cut logs and butterbean poles. You see, back then for us, a garden was as large as the whole, was 5 or 6 Krogers. Children today don't have any idea where food comes from. But our garden was that long and that large, and so we had to plant those butterbean poles and make those vines run up those poles, and then we'd go out there and gather enough food from that garden and bring it in, and the females, the girls in the house, and Mom would do all of the canning. They knew how to preserve things, put them in those fruit jars that many of you have never seen, and seal it with those lids and those tops and put it in the closet for wintertime so that we'd have some fresh food. We'd go out and make absolute certain that we had enough of everything to eat, because we didn't go to town. We didn't have a town to go to. And so we grew up understanding our roles, and we understood that, you know, we were being mistreated. We knew that we didn't have the opportunity to ride school buses and go to school and like other kids, but that was the price that we paid for a certain degree of independence. Now, I did a little hunting as well. Dr. Henderson talked about catching a rabbit with your bare feet, and I got to tell you, I could never do it. Oh, I saw it done. I had cousins that could flat outrun a rabbit and beat him down, catch him, and bring him to the house. The rabbit always got away from me. And so I wasn't able to do that. But here's the interesting thing about that. Today, if you see a rabbit, he won't even run from you. He'll just stand there and watch you. I see squirrels all over the place. As a boy, you couldn't find a squirrel. I would hunt all day long and didn't see a squirrel, nor a rabbit. Oh, they were hiding. But today, I have to stop my car to watch ducks go by on the natural trace. They just walk by. So much till not long ago here in Mississippi, a gentleman that had his house on a reservoir got mad at the ducks and he put them all in the barbecue pit. They fined him and almost sent him to jail, but he was tired of them messing all over his porch. And so things have changed. You know, it's amazing the survival instincts that everybody had then, including the animals, have all changed. The animals think that you need to feed them. I can't let no dog come in the house with me today. A dog's place was under the house, guarding the house, not sitting up in the house with me. We didn't allow that. And so life was tremendously different for us as a boy. And so, but there was one thing that was instilled, that you had to have self-pride and dignity, and you had to understand that you were God's creation and that you were valuable to your family and your society. You see, I thought my daddy actually turned the lights on in the skies at night. As a little boy, I felt like he turned those lights on because he was everything to me. As a little boy, I would follow behind him and I would try to jump in his footsteps. He had those big boots on and his gait was wide. It would be 3 feet between his steps. And as a little boy, I couldn't quite jump that far. But I tried to walk in his footsteps. And then as I got older, when I thought that those gaits and the ability to walk in his footsteps would be easier for me, the older I got, the further apart they got. I realized that I was not the man that he was. I realized that I would never own the land that he owned. I realized that I would be relegated to a different position in life as a boy that was now becoming involved with different races. See, we were pretty much a closed society. I didn't see many white folk. If white folk came in our community, we had the little white picket fence and the little white tires with flowers in them. If a white person came in that community, you would hear the horns going off, letting everybody know that a white person was coming in the community, because we knew that could be trouble. That could be a lot of trouble. White folk would come in our communities and take your cattle. My daddy had a sawmill, ordered it out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog. The white folks took the sawmill. And so we knew that we had to have signals to show when they were coming into the community. And Daddy would go to the door and everybody else, the child, would be hanging on to the mother's coattail, standing around in a circle, trying to see what was about to go down. And so, you know, as a boy, I had a lot of fun. We played ball. We balled up a tin can, like a Vienna can. That was the ball that we had. We rolled that can up and make it to be a ball, and we play out with it. That means that when you play out, you got hit with the can. And you really got hit with it. So you said you should have run faster. And so we found ways to entertain ourselves, swimming in the creeks. You know, we didn't run from moccasins. Moccasins ran from us. We jumped in the lake. He had to get out. Nowadays, snakes don't run from you no more. I had an uncle that was bitten at least 10 times by rattlesnakes. He never died. Your body developed immunity to poison, to venom. When you got sick, they put you on some form of root tree. They would go out and cut some roots from certain trees and boil it all up and tell you to drink that. You'll be all right. I know I've taken a lot of time, and I'm going to make absolutely certain that Dr. Henderson comes back and wraps this show up a little bit later on, but I get a little bit emotional thinking about those days. Oh, but then I think about those beautiful black girls. How pretty, how beautiful they were. And Lord, mothers would have them in these things that they call chastity belts. Some of y'all might know it as girdles. And I don't care how you try to get you just couldn't get her out of that thing. And so, it was wonderful times playing on the church ground, looking for a girlfriend. And if a girl got pregnant back at that time, they sent her away. They sent her out of the community completely because her family was embarrassed. So she had to go to Chicago and live with somebody else and have her baby. And so those were some of the things that went on in Mississippi history. We're going to go to a station break. When we come back, we're going to ask Dr. Henderson to share with you so you will know what it was like for Mississippi black boys then. And we'll talk about them now even more. But I hope you can understand some of the things that our kids are missing, that they did not get. I hope you understand the fact that when I said that as a black boy, I thought my dad had turned the lights on in the sky, you gotta understand what that meant. You gotta understand how empowering that is to feel that way. 20 years later, you put a white doll and a black doll in a room of black children, and the little girls would choose a white doll every time. It wasn't like that for us. It wasn't like that for us. We understood that we were black and that we were bound together. We made our own food, created our own fun, and took care of our own elders. We're going to station break now, and after this, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
With so much going on day to day, we lose track of what's important. Sometimes we get lost, we lose ourselves, and we forget that our personal care is important. Self-care is checking in on our physical and mental health and making sure we are using and putting good things into our bodies. It's when we take time, real time, to connect ourselves back to a beautiful, healthier, happier you. Join me and an expert lineup of speakers on April 1st as we teach you the real meaning of self-care. This will be an empowering and enlightening time to help you get and stay in tune with yourself. Invite a friend, invest in yourself, and let's all learn the true meaning of self-care. You need it, you deserve it. I can't wait to see you transform from the inside out.
Socrates Garrett ENT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. Socrates Garrett ENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into M.Dot grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
Welcome back to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi in the We Believe Digital Broadcast Studio. We've been seen all over the world on Facebook. If you're watching us on Facebook, send us stars and share this program with your friends and family. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the program. We need to increase our subscribers. If you're watching us on our very own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com, hit the donate button and scan through the platform and see all of the categories that are there with great articulate, intelligent content for you to view at your leisure. Also, you'll see We Believe Digital Radio. Listen to great music on our radio station, worldwide internet radio. But we've been talking about the lifestyle of African Americans in Mississippi as a boy, and I shared with you quite a bit of things that I experienced and how I felt as a black male in the early 40s and 50s. And my co-host, Dr. Henderson, has a rich history and has a lot of knowledge that needs to be shared with our viewers all over the world about how it was for black males in Mississippi. Dr. Henderson.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to tell you, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Socrates Garrett, you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Your dad had his own farm. He had his own sawmill. He was able to feed his family. Even though y'all had to work hard to do it, I didn't have that to worry about. All I had to work. Just work, boy. You'll be taken care of. Now let me give you a real news story. Until I was about 18, I didn't worry about anything because I was told. So when you finish at that little elementary school down there in Orange Hill community, when you finish the 8th grade, boy, you don't have anything to worry about. Say, I'm going to give you a house. I'm going to give you a guaranteed job. You're going to make $2 a day, and all you got to do is bale hay, fix the fence, and do whatever we tell you. And when you turn 15, after you get out of this 8th grade, you will have your own house, and when you get seasoned in the area where they see you won't run off anything in your own house, I was told that I could go down to Raymond, Mississippi and get a used car, pick out any used car I want, because the plantation owner had friends that had a dealership down in Raymond, Mississippi, and I was going to go down and pick out me a used car when I turned 16. And since I already had a house set for me, when I turned about 16 and a half, I was going to go down the road there and get Miss Mary Jane's daughter and let her move with me, because most black people at that time had too many children. And believe it or not, you didn't have to get married during those times. We didn't know a lot about marriage. You just designated someone to come and move with you. Parents were glad to let them go, because there was somebody that didn't have to feed. They might have anywhere from 4 to 10 or 13 kids. Some had more than that. So I knew when I finished 8th grade, I had a job, house, and a possible wife. We call it today shacking. We didn't call it shacking then. You called it your wife, and you start a family. But something happened, Mr. Socrates. During the summer, when I finished 8th grade, I had that house set. I had that permanent job already set, and I was feeling good because I knew I was going to be a man in a few months. I wanted to get away from home anyway. And something happened that changed my life. The county supervisors in Hinds County opened a black high school for black county students that couldn't afford to go to Jackson, to the 1 or 2 black high schools there. They put it in the county area, in an area called Clinton, Mississippi, And the new high school for blacks, the first one they had in that area, was called Sumner Hill High School. And my parents disappointed me seriously, very seriously disappointed me. They told me, you cannot take that house. You cannot take that job, boy. You're going to go to high school. What? Go to school? That ruined my life, I thought. So instead of going in that house and getting that wonderful job, making that $2 a day, and what I missed most was not getting that used car, I had to go to high school. And I started off in the 9th grade. And as the years passed, by the time I turned 18, I was about to finish high school, I had a new perspective on life. One day, I got a chance to go to a little town, it was a big town to me, called Jackson, Mississippi. And down on Ferry Street, that's where the black people would hang out. And every now and then I go to Ferry Street to look around and do a little shopping, as they call it. But a broke man can't do much shopping. And what scared me to death, got there, and they had a 4-way stop sign there with a red light. And I was with my mom. I remember this just like yesterday. And I saw all those cars coming in 4 different directions. I started hollering and grabbing my mom and holding on to her. What are we going to do about all these cars when they get together? See, I'd never seen a red light. And those cars stopped at the red light. They didn't hit each other. And as we walked around, we would go in stores and all kind of businesses had black folks up in there. Movie theater, had black hotels on Ferry Street and in the area. Pharmacies, doctor's office, lawyer's office. And I said, doggone, how did they do that? And I started getting brainwashed again, saying, I don't think this plantation life is what I need to be doing. I need to be thinking about something else. And I thought about it. I talked to my dad about going to college when I finished high school. He said, son, that can't happen. I said, we can't afford it. I said, what? He asked, what did it cost? At the time, you can go to Jackson State, Tougaloo, or a place called Utica Institute. To get in Utica Institute for a whole semester, I needed $62. To go to Jackson State at that time, I needed about $150. And to go to Tougaloo, I had to have about $300. And I ended up with no money. I had a choice to get a job, join the military, and get out of the house. At that time, at 18, with a high school diploma, you had to go to college, get you a job, or join the military. I had an uncle that lived in Vicksburg, Mississippi. One of the greatest men I know. This man heard that I had finished high school, the first one in the family to finish, and he told me, boy, if you come down here and work with me during the summer, I'm a bricklayer, and I'm real good. I got my training after World War II, and I don't have nothing but jobs. So when I leave my regular job, I work until dark on a part-time job and all day on Saturday. He said, if you would move with me and live with me and my wife, I'd pay you $2 an hour. Almost fell dead. $2 an hour, and I just left a few years ago with a job opportunity making $2 a day. He said, if you work with me, I'll pay you this summer $2 an hour, and you could go to college. Since I told you about the prices, so I made $2 an hour for about 2 months during the summer. And I had enough money doing the one summer session working for him, making $2 an hour. He let me live with him rent-free. No rent. His wife prepared food. And I had enough money in one summer to attend Utica Institute down in Utica, Mississippi, 2 years out of one summer. And I lived at home and rode the bus every day. That got me started. And when I was there, sir, I learned that there was nothing but opportunities throughout the world. At that time, Utica Institute, it wasn't Utica Junior College, it was Utica Institute, a private black school, had doctors, PhDs, people with master's degrees, black folks that were sharp. Some of them had attended what they call white universities, but they couldn't get jobs at white schools. So here you got a doctor in math or education teaching in a junior college. And I learned that there were some excellent opportunities out there. But being one that was ill-educated, I was not an honors student at the time. When I finished at that junior college, I didn't have good grades enough to get a scholarship. So there I was again, uneducated, broke. Finally got a little certificate from the junior college called a certificate or degree in general education. Now, what can you do with a general education degree and you still living at home and you expect to get on your own? So when I graduated, I didn't know what I was going to do 2 or 3 months before that date. And one day, one of my teachers called me in the office, and I just must tell you his name. I don't even think he's dead yet. He was such a great man, I'm just going to mention it. His name was Charles Holmes. He taught social studies at that time. That was back in the early 1960s. And he said, Eldridge, he called me Eldridge. Say, you one of my better students. Say, man, I think you need to go to college. Say, I can get you over at Jackson State. I said to myself, I know that's not possible. Because, man, I hear you have to have good grades. I hear you have to have a good ACT score. I didn't know about ACT. I know I took one, but nobody never told me what I made, so I don't know whether I had a good grade or not in that. But I didn't have to worry about it. He said, I'll get you a job. And he picked up the phone, called someone at Jackson State, a man named Mr. Lane, L-A-N-E. And I heard one side of the conversation. Look, I have a good student in my office. He graduated from school. He needs a job. And I'm telling you, he is a good student. One of my best students. Can you give him a job? I could only hear what Mr. Holmes was saying. And then he'd listen. And he got through. Say, I done got you a job, Eldridge. Say, you go up there to Jackson State. You got a job. Man, that changed my life. I knew something was getting ready to happen, but I didn't know nothing about no senior college. I went up there, and that man talked to me. I filled out a little piece of paper. He gave me a job working in the flower garden. They had something called a greenhouse, and my job, along with other students, was to go and pick up the flowers when they had a program on campus. We had to go and put those nice flowers in those boxes and cans around the walls, so when they have a meeting or a convention, it'll look good. And that's where I got started. But being ignorant, I filled out a little piece of paper, worked during the summer, living in a dormitory, and about a month after school started, I started being concerned, Mr. Socrates. Now, this is a true story. I wanted to know why I wasn't going to class. I said, they haven't called me to go to class. And they had a man in the dormitory, they called him deans then, the dean of men. He is deceased now, but his name was Mr. Johnson. And I talked to Mr. Johnson about that. I said, I haven't been called to go to class. He said, when did you register? I said, I filled out some papers a long time ago. I found out there was an application for a little job I hadn't even registered, and they allowed me to live in the dormitory, anticipating that I would start school in September. You started in September during those days. And I was not even enrolled. And since I was doing my side hustle, I cut hair, and this man allowed me to live in the dormitory without being enrolled, which was against the rules at the time. He knew my situation at home, and he allowed me to cut his boy's hair once a week. And I just stayed in the dormitory until the next semester and got enrolled. See what happened when you stick with things, when the Lord is on your side, when you're totally not informed about anything, there's always somebody out there that'll help you.
Well, Doc, I guarantee you that there's somebody out there that'll help you. There's also somebody out there that'll hurt you.
Every time.
And so I don't know if it's luck of the draw for you to have encountered those individuals, but many blacks that came from where you came from ended up in the swamplands, hung, dropped out, on street corners, homeless. And what did they do to deserve that?
They really had a lack of knowledge about survival. They didn't have a future plan in their hearts and in their minds. Nor did I at the time. And briefly, we have a few minutes. I'm going to tell you why Mr. Holmes gave me that opportunity to attend college.
Okay.
It was because of my trickery. Since I was just a less than average student, a good old C minus, C plus every now and then, and in the hard courses, I was very fortunate. I made a D minus or D plus. D now, not B, so I was able to pass along. But in Mr. Holmes' class, since I was totally worthless educationally, that man would come to class, Mr. Socrates, without notes and talk about history. And I said, dog, that can't be true. This man had no notes, wasn't looking in the book, talking about history and say, and I've been telling this story for years. If you look on page 255, Abraham Lincoln said this, George Washington did this, the Constitution was passed at a certain time. And since I was, I said, I don't believe that. I'll go home and read. I said, I'm going to catch him in a lie. So I would read and read. Never caught him in a lie, but at the thing, when he would be talking, every now and then I would answer a question. And that's the only course I made an A in, and he thought I was a good student. And that's where I got a chance to enroll at Jackson State. By having one good grade and the potential to do something as he would see in me in his mind.
Well, Doc, I'm glad you ran into Mr. Holmes. Tell me a little bit about the conditions of young black males today, especially with 130 homicides in Jackson, Mississippi, primarily committed on black crime. How much crime did you have in your community versus what you see now?
Well, we didn't have very much at all because we were sheltered. We had work. You didn't have time to go and do any killing and stealing. The only criminal activity we had were those type of criminal activities that were sanctioned by the white folks, selling whiskey, stealing a little bit, selling them the goods, and so you go to somebody's house and you steal something, you could sell it to the Caucasians in the community. You can go to his barn at night and steal stuff and sell it back to him, because the people that would operate the outside plantation stores were hired by the big people that owned the plantation, and they would let the black folks come in and steal stuff and sell it back to them, so they got their little salary, had the extra cotton or peanuts or corn, and they would sell that on the side up in Florida and other places, so all of them got rich except the black person. And a black person got caught, they knew they couldn't turn the white folks in. They had to go to jail or go to prison, those that got caught.
And so black youth of today,
those young people are in bad shape, sir. I thought I had a tough life. It's worse for those black kids.
Doc, it is worse. It is worse for them today with all of the freedom that they enjoy, the privilege that they enjoy. But it's worse for them with privilege. Are we missing something here?
We're missing a lot of stuff here. I'm going to use the word stuff.
Yeah.
Well, those black boys and girls now are in a very serious social situation. Most of them don't have fathers. 72% of them never seen their father on a regular basis. They were born out of wedlock in most cases, and those that were not, the mom had married a person, and if she married them, they were gone in 6 months or so. So the young boys raised without a father. They don't have a grandfather around. I had a father, a grandfather, and a distant great-grandfather in the community, and all of them interacted together. I had grandparents on both sides. You see, people that I respected, that worked me hard, took me to church and so forth. These kids now don't even go to church. The parents won't allow them to go. They don't even demand. And now even the parents are not going to church a lot. They go to the YouTube and the Facebook church now. They just don't have any standards. And they do anything they want to do. And the kids, most of them don't finish high school. I'm talking about that 72%. that's born out of wedlock are just born and no father's in the house. Now, that's bad to say. I don't even like to talk about it. It's true, but people get sensitive and they feel bad and they call me and criticize me for saying it, but it's true. So those guys are bound to get hooked up in the criminal justice system, and the poor girls are bound to be mothers before they're 18 in most cases.
Well, we've been talking a lot about how it was in Mississippi as black boys, and this was the same in Alabama and Louisiana and the rest, all across the country. I don't know much about how it was up north because we never went up north. And so my daddy was born in Farm Haven, Mississippi, and lived to be 78 years old and died 20 feet from where he was born. And so, you know, we don't know much about how things were in other places, but we're going to talk about black youth today and what they're missing. And we're going to talk about what is required for us to change the current trajectory on where our folk are headed. Too many of our folk are landing in jail, they're unemployed, broken families, and we're going to talk about how we're going to change that. And we can talk about it because we experienced a different feeling, and we know what it was like to have self-esteem. And so as these shows go on from week to week, we're going to continue to deal with the conditions of African Americans today versus yesterday, and what we must do to correct what we see happening here today. Dr. Henderson, your last words.
Well, I want to thank you for this opportunity to work with you as a co-host. And ladies and gentlemen, if you all want to hear the real news, now I can't give you the real news on this show because some of it is so bad, tears will come to your eyes. But if you want to hear a real talk about these actions and activities, you can contact us at 601-201-1957, or you can email us at clu369@gmail.com, and we'll come and speak with you at your church, your school, or your community organization, or we will send someone. We love opportunity. We want to talk to you. And the good part about Mr. Secretary is what we do. We have solutions to every problem we address. And we teach people that you can change any human error if you have an action plan for success. And all you have to do is have a timeline and a guideline and start changing in your life in 30, 60, and 90 days, guaranteed. No matter how bad it is, no father in the house, no mother in the house, grandma raised you, whatever. You can start changing your life. When we talk about education and training and other topics, we tell you exactly how to solve that problem. And you can start in 30, 60, or 90 days.
I hope you've enjoyed our show this evening. This has been Socrates, Garrett Live. We come to you every Friday at 5 o'clock. Dr. Henderson and I look forward to visiting with you again next week. Stay safe and good evening.